Some nights feel like this. You're not lost. You're not moving fast. But you're holding on more tightly than you realize. This story isn't about going somewhere new. It's about what happens when you stop pulling yourself back. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to follow anything. Just let the story move. The way water does. The boat was never meant to travel far. It was built for calm water, short distances, and familiar shores. It wasn't designed to fight strong currents or prove its strength. It was simply made to float. For a long time, the boat stayed tied to the dock. The rope was thick, worn smooth by years of use. The knot was careful and familiar. People said it was safer that way. If you stay here, they told the boat, nothing bad will happen. And the boat believed them. The water moved gently beneath it. Days passed without urgency. Seasons shifted almost unnoticed. The boat watched other boats leave. Some returned quickly, as if unsure. Some came back damaged. Some never came back at all. The boat stayed. It wasn't afraid of the water itself. It was afraid of drifting. Afraid of not knowing where it would end up. Afraid of letting go of what was holding it still. The rope felt like certainty. The dock felt like safety. Even when the water called quietly, the boat stayed where it was. One night, without warning, the water rose a little higher than usual. Not enough to alarm anyone. Not enough to be called a storm. Just enough to change the way things rested. The dock creaked softly. The rope tightened, then loosened again. Not because it snapped, but because it had grown tired. The boat felt the change immediately. A small pull. A subtle shift in balance. It didn't panic. It didn't move. It waited. Slowly, almost kindly, the knot slipped free. The rope slid into the water without a sound. And suddenly, the boat was no longer tied. At first, nothing happened. The boat floated exactly where it had been. The shore looked the same. The night felt quiet. The boat wondered if this was what drifting felt like. If this was all there was to fear. Then the current touched it. Not roughly. Not suddenly. Just enough to move it a few inches away from the dock. The boat held its breath. This was the moment it had imagined so many times. The moment it had prepared for. The moment it had avoided. But nothing terrible followed. The water carried the boat forward without effort. The boat didn't steer. It didn't resist. It simply allowed itself to be held. The shore slowly changed. Lights grew softer. Sounds became distant. The familiar faded without disappearing. The boat felt lighter than it ever had before. Not because it was free, but because it was no longer holding on. It expected fear. It expected regret. But what arrived instead was relief. Time passed differently on the water. There was no direction to measure. No progress to track. No distance that needed explaining. The boat drifted the way leaves do. When they stopped fighting the current. Not lost. Just moving. At one point, the boat noticed the stars. They reflected gently on the surface of the water. Steady and quiet, undemanding. The boat realized something then. It had been floating all along. The rope had never been the reason it stayed afloat. The current did not rush. It did not push the boat where it didn't belong. It carried the boat where the water already knew how to go. As morning approached, the movement softened. The water slowed. The current loosened its grip. The boat felt itself drawn toward a curve in the shore. Not the dock it had left behind, but something that felt familiar in a different way. It wasn't planned. It wasn't chosen. It simply happened. The boat drifted closer until the water grew shallow. The movement stopped on its own. No effort required. No decision needed. The boat had arrived. Not because it tried. Not because it controlled the journey. But because it allowed itself to drift long enough to come home. The boat rested there quietly. Nothing needed to be tied. Nothing needed to be secured. Sometimes, the boat still thought about the dock. About the rope. About the certainty it once held. But now it understood something it hadn't before. Letting go was not the same as being lost. Drifting was not the same as failing. Resting was not the same as giving up. If you've been holding on tightly, afraid that relaxing your grip will send you somewhere wrong, you're not weak. You've been careful. The boat that drifted home didn't abandon itself. It trusted the water it was already floating on. The calm way is a place like that. You don't have to push. You don't have to steer. You can rest. And let yourself arrive. In your own time.